Joining us now for our political panel is Amy Walter, national editor of the Cook Political Report, John Heilemann of Bloomberg Politics, and Showtime's The Circus. Reihan Salam is executive editor of the National Review, and Dana Milbank is a columnist with the Washington Post. Dana, I'll start with you. Two conventions, two visions. Is this campaign about two electorates, or?
Well, we're essentially back to where we were a few weeks ago, as you pointed out in your CBS poll. Clinton got a similar bounce. It's actually pretty good news for her, given that Trump had a lot more consolidating to do with his core supporters than Clinton had to do. I think we saw, day and night, dark and light, but there was some similarity there in that the Democratic convention was all about Donald Trump. And the Republican convention was also all about Donald Trump, who kept appearing day after day. I think that's more the narcissistic nature of the candidate, but it is clear that both of these campaigns are going to try to make it about the other guy. Because if you make it about the other guy, they're both unpopular. If you make it about the other guy, you win. Yeah,
they made it all about each other, which is going to be...
which is the constant theme.
Right, and it's going to be a pretty ugly campaign. But the response from the Trump folks is... they are clueless in Clinton land. You know, they give this optimistic speech. The next day, GDP is weak, and they just do not have their eye on the ball. Is that a winning message?
If this were a quote-unquote normal election, where you had a Republican who came out and said, I'm an agent of change, things haven't gone well, we need to turn the page, I think it would be very difficult for Hillary Clinton, one, to embrace the president, as she did, literally and figuratively, to try to walk this line of things are kind of bad, but not so bad. It's not as bad as you think. But this isn't sort of a normal election, and the Republican put forward is the kind of candidate, and again, she's going to have to make this case, that he is not the right messenger. He has the right message, but the danger is the change, because his change brings him.
Too much change.
Too much change, too dangerous. So that's where I agreed with David Axelrod, which is trying to make her an agent of change is not going to go anywhere. She's not a change agent. She is the status quo. But she has to make the case that the status quo, it's better to be safe than to make the risk of change.
Right.
There's definitely a danger for both of these candidates. So if you look at Donald Trump and why the tone of this convention was so pessimistic, it makes perfect sense when you look at his thesis as a candidate in the Republican primaries. The folks who flocked to him, even if they were reasonably well off, even if they were middle class, were people who felt like the 21st century has basically been a disaster. When you have people who compare themselves to, let's say, men, who compare themselves to their fathers at the age they are now, and when they look at their status, when they look at their stability, the other things they enjoyed in their lives, and then they look at themselves today. Now look at the Democratic coalition. This is a coalition where you have Michael Bloomberg, a billionaire who's much richer than Donald Trump, speaking about how things in the country are going basically well, right? Then you also have minority voters who, even if they're struggling, even if they're working class, they're doing better than their moms and dads in a lot of cases. So you're offering this case for optimism. Does that case for optimism resonate with what David Axelrod had said, that 20% of the country that's in the middle? We don't know. Donald Trump's case for pessimism. It makes a lot of sense to the people who won him the GOP nomination. Does it make sense for people outside of that universe?
There were a lot of things, John, going on in the Democratic convention. One of them was the praise for John McCain. Hillary Clinton praised a number of Republicans. The president praised George Herbert Walker Bush in our interview. That seems to be aimed at that 20%.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, look, I think it was Michael Steele, the former Republican chairman, who said that the Democratic convention was the best Republican convention he'd ever seen. Right. And not just in terms of praising those Republicans, but also in trying to take on the mantle of Republican optimism, of old-fashioned Republican optimism, of patriotism, the giant flags, all those appeals to values. To Rand's point, it's, where's the available vote out there? Who are those available voters, right? Trump has a huge problem with college-educated voters. And if you think about where the available vote is out there, unless there's some magic that Trump is able to perform, which is bringing out a whole bunch of new voters in an unprecedented way who are his kinds of voters. If you're thinking about the normal electorate right now, college-educated women in the suburbs in these battleground states, what did you hear at the Republican convention that resonates with them? What did you hear at the Democratic convention that resonates with them? I'm not convinced that the apocalyptic tone, not just pessimistic, but apocalyptic tone of the Republican convention is going to resonate with white, suburban, college-educated women in those battleground states? That's the real question.
When you look at when Republicans do well in these midterm elections, they do well because they do well with college-educated white voters. And they add that to that kind of working class base that's been in the party for some time. Now, Trump might have moved the needle a little bit with those white working class voters, but I agree with John that it's that college-educated white vote that's responsible for their biggest successes.
He has fundamentally decided that this is a turnout election, and that if he can just get these white, lower-educated, older males out to vote in larger number than ever before, he wins. Clinton's pursuing, I think, a very common, typical strategy. So we are all, looking back at through our history, we say, well, obviously the Clinton strategy makes sense of reaching out to the middle at this point. Donald Trump believes that he can rewrite the whole fundamentals of politics.
It seems, Amy, this travel that Hillary Clinton did after her convention, though, was aimed at trying to protect those blue-collar voters that we've been saying. So help us understand that. So what we got here is Trump does well, perhaps, with even some Democrat blue-collar voters, but Hillary Clinton does well. Trump gives her an opportunity with those college-educated women, but
you also have to hold your margins. Okay. It's one thing saying you're going to lose white non-college voters. It's another thing to lose them by 10 points more than Barack Obama did, right? So you got to keep your margins there. And this is another fundamental element of this campaign, which is Hillary Clinton has all the elements of a traditionally strong campaign. She has the money, she has the infrastructure, she has the campaign advertising, and yet she's basically, 2 points ahead, or you could argue it tied. So, and there may be an enthusiasm problem, but she has the infrastructure to do that. He has the enthusiasm, but doesn't have the infrastructure. Right. So which one is going to win this battle?
I mean, this is a huge problem. This, again, is another huge problem for the Trump campaign, which is if you're depending on changing the electorate in some fundamental way, that's a mechanical thing as much as a message thing. And this disparity of resources, this disparity in terms of the ground game, poses a huge challenge to him. Just to make this one last point about white college-educated voters, Republicans have won white college-educated voters for 50 years. That it's not even been close. And right now, the polling that we just did at Bloomberg on this has Hillary Clinton up in double digits with white college-educated voters. That's a huge problem if you add that in to the existing Obama coalition of non-white voters that he has turned out and have helped Democrats win 5 of the last 6 popular votes at the presidential level in America.
If she can turn out the Obama
if she can turn them out.
Yeah. Reihan, the mechanical stuff that John is talking about is basically the nuts and bolts of taking a person who likes you from their living room to the polling place. Wouldn't the Trump people say, hey, this guy puts them in the seats. He's the one who's got high ratings. He's making people really enthusiastic. He doesn't need all the this and that and the fancy consultants to get them to the polling place. They're going to be marching to the polling place.
Well, look, one thing we know is that in 2012, you had the Romney campaign, a very professional campaign by all accounts. Yet when they deployed get out the vote technology in 2012, they struggled with it. They did a very poor job. The ORCA system was something that was notorious for its many failures. Now, this is kind of an inside baseball kind of thing. But then when you look at the Trump campaign, look, there's some level at which you have to make sure that people, as you say, get to the polling place. That involves infrastructure necessarily. It involves infrastructure. Another thing is, are you getting your support in the right places? So, and this is a dilemma for both of these campaigns. The Electoral College means that if you run up the total in the Bay Area and the New York suburbs, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat. And similarly, if you're a Republican, if you're doing extraordinarily well with non-college white voters in the Deep South, but you're not doing quite as well with them in swing states, that's a problem. So to some degree, when we look at how close this election is, it's not actually giving us the useful information about where is it close and who's actually going to get out those marginal votes.
And we are seeing those margins, though, in places, as I said, the margin between losing by 10 points and losing by 20 points in some of those areas that Obama did do better than Hillary Clinton is with some of those voters. So the organic question. The other thing was that Republicans that I've talked to actually looked at those voters who turned out for the primaries, right? We hear all this talk, a huge turnout for Donald Trump, biggest number of Republicans ever to vote. 95, 96% of those are traditional Republican voters. Now, maybe they didn't vote in primaries before. That is true. But they voted in general elections. So this now is getting turnout to a place that we've never seen before, not just getting people who are already registered to come out and vote in a primary.
So it's not that Trump is a new phenomenon. What's new is he's pulling people into the primary process, which doesn't tell us maybe anything about the general. Let me, if I may, switch to debates. What's going on with Donald Trump in the debates? What do you all see happening here?
John, I'm glad you held Reince's and Manafort's feet to the fire on this. September 23rd, 2015 is when those dates were put out there. Not a peep from the RNC, not a peep from candidate Trump. I think it's important to point this out because now you have Trump saying the system's rigged. You have Manafort with you saying they were conspired with the Hillary Clinton campaign. This isn't in the realm of he said, she said. This is a fact. And I think it just needs to be pointed out that whatever they're doing right now is something that they were not doing for the last 11 months.
I'm very interested in the minor party candidates. If you look at Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate, he has been pretty much exclusively running a kind of centrist, moderate campaign in which he emphasizes his social liberalism. You'd think that a Libertarian candidate would be there to kind of attract some of these college-educated voters who otherwise vote for Republicans. But when you're looking at the debates, it's a really big question. Is Trump going to say, well, I insist that we have Gary Johnson and Jill Stein there? Yeah, it would make sense because he seems to do a heck of a lot better. We didn't see him in a one-on-one debate. So that will be very interesting. And then, frankly, he'll have other allies who will say that, yeah, we want other people in this process too. And if those guys are people who would otherwise be Clinton voters, that clearly has implications for the election.
John, we focus on the debates because it's the next big kind of turning point in the road.
Right.
Should we do that? Should we be, or I mean, are they going to be even bigger now than ever?
Look, I mean, if you think about what the schedule is of life between now and that first debate, you got the Olympics, which under normal circumstances sort of blot out the sun in terms of news coverage over the course of most of August. Again, a lot of the old rules have not applied in this cycle. Right. So Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton might not be like that the way it was back in 1996 in terms of the news blackout. But I think the first debate is going to be gargantuan. I think you will see television audiences unlike any television audiences we've ever seen in our lifetimes. If you're on a canoe in the Zambezi or on a tea farm in Sri Lanka, people are going to be wanting to watch this debate. It's going to be huge. I think that Trump will not want to do 3 debates. I think that if they both recognize that he has to do one because there's so many questions about his temperament and suitability for the office. If he doesn't pass the Reagan 80 test, can you imagine this guy in the Oval Office? He's got to do that in that debate. It will matter hugely. But I can easily imagine him saying, I want to pass that test once and then move on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So 20 seconds, what happens if he does that, if he gets out of the 3 debate?
We have not been able to answer the what if. I mean, I feel like half the answers to these questions are that emoji that they have now, the shruggy, where you're just like, I do not know. You would think that would be completely damaging, and yet we've not been correct in assuming that earlier.
All
Nothing
right,
more
we
fun
end-
than a debate about debates.
Yes, true. We end on the uncertainty emoji. Thanks to all of you, and we'll be back in a moment.